So yes, we are finally back, and now, it's time to lose a few more loved ones, as in today's video we are diving back into Jujutsu Kaisen's culling game. You all thought Sendai's colony was absolutely insane? Well, let me just say that this isn't any old colony as well, as we are finally back with the gambling madman himself, Hikari Kinji, and the multitude of his battles throughout Tokyo Colony number 2. But just before we do go any further, if you guys are new around here and want to watch more stuff just like this, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and also be sure to leave a like on the video, as it really helps out with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. But anyway, enough of that, let's get into the absolute beatdown that is Jujutsu Kaisen's culling game. So to start things off here, we're actually throwing away any idea of that silly old culling game and going back to before the countrywide idol transfiguration, where a young man with blue hair and blue eyes, named Charles Bernard, filled out his visitor's registration at Shueisha's publishing house in Tokyo. Two of the staff members noticed and discussed if he brought a manga submission in, also commenting on how unusual it is for a gaijin to do so. Charles later ends up meeting a Shueisha staff member to review his manga submission. While improbably sitting on their desk, Charles expresses that he's always pondered what makes a manga creator. They don't need licenses, and in Charles' opinion, experience doesn't necessarily validate a creation either. Which, you know, does make sense, like Isayama for example never had a manga before Attack on Titan. But anyways, the employee looked over at Bernard's manga while hardly listening to his words, wishing that he would just sit in the chair. He only commented on the foreigner's Japanese, saying that it was pretty good, but Charles responded by repeating the same sentiment back, confusing the man. Hate to cut myself off again, but if you guys watch anyone who makes Japanese content and lives in Japan as a foreigner, this is a pretty common thing to hear, to the point that it's almost an underhand insult by the Japanese people to outsiders living in Japan. But anyway, the employee stated that it's obviously the case because he's Japanese, and Charles reveals that he was actually born and raised in Japan, although his parents are French. The employee apologized for assuming, and Charles dismissed it because he believed it would be the start of a long relationship between him and the publishing studio. Yet, this dog of a Shueisha employee is mostly unimpressed by Charles' manga submission and critiques the story, the genre, the tone, and most of all, the artwork. He used one example of one panel where a character's finger is bent too much in one direction. The employee tries to show Charles by pointing his own finger in demonstration, but Charles immediately breaks it to match the manga's art. Irritated, Charles told the man to watch movies or stare at photos if he wanted realistic artwork. He believed a publishing house should appreciate the passion that can't be replicated in precise artwork. Charles finishes his tirade after assaulting the employee and storms out of the building, deeming the experience as a waste of time. So yeah, don't know what that was all about, probably just a small warning from Gege to any future publishers about his artwork. Skipping forward now to the fateful day of November 12th, we find that somehow this pure manga reading degenerate Charles is outside and on a Ferris wheel with Hikari Kinji inside of the culling game. He asks Hikari if he knows what makes someone a manga creator. Yet, as we could probably imagine, an annoyed Hikari answers that he simply doesn't care. Just lacking there and chilling out, Charles is thankful that there is still electricity powering the area, but Hikari isn't and suggests that he normally wouldn't ride a Ferris wheel with another man. Charles points out that he could have refused the ride, but Hikari wants to scope out the area in case he brings a girl back one day. Cause, you know, big brain thinking and all, pre-planning for future events, as the man knows that the culling game ain't gonna murk him for sure. But anyway, Charles is surprised Hikari believes Tokyo will recover from the culling game, claiming that he is the exact opposite, as someone who's only come to gaze upon the end of it all. Ever since curses flooded Tokyo, there haven't been outlets for manga, and creators that Charles respected are giving up. Charles asks Hikari to give him a reason to fight, because the heroes in battle mangas are always fighting for positive reasons, while the culling game only incites fights for negative ones. Charles asks Hikari to provoke him enough to instill hatred inside of him to the point where he could take him out without any remorse. Hearing this, Hikari decides to oblige and thoroughly insults Charles. He says that he would never read Charles' creepy manga because his gloomy disposition might affect him. Then, and probably one of the best entire damn lines so far of the manga, he also tells Charles to stop whining and start fighting creepy otaku. Insulted and with tears in his eyes, Charles asks why he would say such a mean thing. Ready to fight Hikari for his rude comments, Charles conjures the G-War Staff, a pin-shaped spear. Immediately, he attacks, bursting through their pod and forcing Hikari onto the Ferris wheel where his assault continues. Charles thrusts his spear at Hikari's head several times while quoting a poem from a creator he admires. Hikari simply avoids these strikes and jumps off the Ferris wheel onto a building below, causing the Frenchman to chase after. Standing there, it is shown that our special grade is a little annoyed because Charles is actually quoting a comment from Katsura Hoshino, which Hikari just doesn't consider as a poem. Charles expands upon the poem by explaining that a mangaka enters a fictitious space in their minds where anything is possible because to them, reality just isn't satisfying. He continues by stating he believes his reality has been overtaken by Jujutsu, and because of this, he has lost his motivation as both a manga reader and a creator. He asks Hikari what that feeling is called, and the suspended student just simply replies that he's just getting bored with this. As his fighting spirit then begins rising, Charles suggests that the feeling he's got is called despair instead. Fueled by his sorrow for his opponent, Charles strikes hard with his G-War staff and scratches Hikari's cheek open, drawing a bit of blood at the pen's tip. Noticing that the spear is a pen, Hikari asks him if it's okay for a mangaka to use their drawing pen for violence, but Charles argues using a reference from Captain Tsubasa. Following this, he activates the condition for his curse technique and marks Hikari with a glowing square. Curiously confused, Hikari asks what's going on as he throws a flying kick, but Charles is able to avoid it and immediately counterattacks with an attack, surprising the former. Easily though, Hikari maintains his balance as he's knocked back several meters from the blow. Although he personally didn't take any damage, his sleeve was cut wide open. While examining the tear, Hikari also analysed the way the Frenchman moved and decides that it has to be more than just a simple reflex. Noticing the special grade sorcerer took his hands out of his pockets for the first time, Charles taunts him for it and then explains that the glowing square is actually a manga panel that lets the user see their opponent's next move. Currently, the Frenchman can only see 1 second in advance, but as the pen's tip fills with Hikari's blood, the former will be able to see further into the future. Having heard this, Hikari dashes straight at Charles to confirm this ability's effect and nearly lands a powerful right hook, with the latter admitting that it would have taken him out if not for the effect of the G-War staff. Quickly after, Charles counters with his attack and hits Hikari across the head with the blunt end of his spear, affirming to Hikari that the Frenchman can really see the future. However, Hikari is unimpressed by this dude's ability and just disappears from Charles' line of sight before he reappears and punches Charles in the back, stating that he needs to be able to see him in order to see the future through his technique. To counter, Hikari attacks Charles repeatedly from his blind spots without letting up. In an attempt to retaliate, Charles tries to stab Hikari in the back, but the latter has already anticipated that he would try that and intercepts before striking him again. Before Charles can turn around and recover, Hikari completely and utterly blitzes him while stating that he can't just go easy on him because he knows Charles would just selfishly attack someone else later. Continuing, Hikari believes that in order to stop this, he needs to utterly break Charles and hits him with an extremely powerful punch. He then quickly goes to get behind him, but Charles is able to recover from the previous punch in time and reactively strikes his blind spot, cutting Hikari's forehead. Irate over how the battle's going now, Charles claims that the vessel containing his heart is broken and is spilling out in a gush of emotion. He adds that now, due to gaining more ink in his pen, he can see 2 seconds into Hikari's future and will be waiting in his own blind spot. Confused as to why Hikari isn't intimidated though, Charles asks his opponent why he's just standing there, posing while in the situation. I don't actually think Charles has ever bumped into anyone who can use a domain expansion, and due to this, while Hikari stands there, he uses both his hands to form the proper hand sign to cast his domain expansion, the Idle Death Gamble. Due to his domain's guaranteed effect, its rules are instantly transmitted to Charles's brain.
Instantly, the soon-to-be mangaka begins to understand the rules of Hikari's domain expansion. It's shown to us that the Idle Death Gamble is based on the Japanese pachinko machine inspired by the shoujo series Seiyuu Private Pure Love Train. During the domain's active phase, the user must hit the jackpot by getting 3 of the same symbol, which will allow them to get a bonus. There's a flow of 3 different levels that determines the percentage of increased probability, and also the probability of the jackpot through a visual effect, which Hikari can choose, though ultimately this depends on the so-called luck Hikari refers to. Also, certain Riichi scenarios can be activated at points throughout this process, and chance boosters allow for an increase in the chance of a jackpot.
Having heard all of this, Charles yells out annoyed by the sudden info dump that was literally just implanted into his brain as the first stage of Hikari's domain begins. Quickly, Kinji releases a green and red visual effect attack, which Charles dodges out of the way, causing it to activate into a Riichi scenario, changing the scene around them.
It's explained to the confused Charles that if the character Yuki passes through the gate, then Hikari immediately hits the jackpot.
Charles attempts to swipe at it, but it's just a visualization, so nothing happens, meaning all he can do is wait to see the result. Which is, like kind of sus. It's almost just a guaranteed jackpot whenever a Riichi scenario pops up. I wonder if that's a house rule type thing, referring back to how his domain is based on pachinko machine. But anyway, I'll let Ronan take back over.
Due to the indicator being weak, the Riichi scenario fails, causing them to reset back at the beginning of the domain's expansion. The sequence of events leading up to either the reset of the domain or a jackpot are considered one of Hikari's full rolls. giving Charles a very strict time limit to defeat the gambling sorcerer.
Standing there, Charles thinks about how he can't use his manga curse technique to predict the outcome, meaning that the process will repeat continuously until he defeats him, or Kenji draws a winner, which he knows would result in a loss for him. However, to Kenji's surprise, what Charles is most infuriated at is the presentation, taking the beloved Private Pure Love Train manga and turning it into something bizarre for gambling. He continues to try and attack, questioning how long he will keep up with the jackpot rate being only 1 in 239. However, Hikari is still able to easily dodge each attack while confidently stating that he's never gone past 30 times. This time, Hikari activates a Reichi scenario with an 80% success rate, leaving the two anxiously watching as they continue to duke it out. He's unable to focus on Kenji's future attacks as he tries to pay attention to the Reichi scenario, calling on the Yume character to get on the train in hopes of preventing the jackpot. Sadly for him though, the train leaves and Yume disappears, allowing Charles to slice at Hikari's side. Charles explains while confidently standing there that if it was a game of skill rather than luck, Hikari might have won. But as he turns around, he is utterly shocked to find Yume is still standing there, saying that she missed the train, meaning that Hikari had actually indeed won the jackpot. Quickly, Hikari darts in and kicks Charles away, declaring that he uses skill to grab a hold of luck.
Elsewhere in Tokyo No. 2 Colony, Panda sits alone atop a shipping container in a shipyard. Upon smelling the air, he notes that roughly 3 people have been dismembered nearby. He can also hardly sense the perpetrator's presence, which might suggest that they can freely activate their curse energy. Panda reviews the plan that he and everyone had agreed on beforehand. They'd planned to leave the fighting just to Hikari, but the barrier, just like over in Tokyo Colony 1 with Yuji and Megami, split them up upon entry to one of those random spawn locations. After a bit more thinking, Panda decides to take off and rolls his cute behind off the shipping container to go in search of Hana. Once he landed, he looks both ways and sighs a breath of relief. However, at that exact moment, Hajime Kashimo walks right around the corner. In a split-second reaction, Panda plays a real-life panda, and initially this does work.
However, Hajime has an Omega-sized brain and summons his Gogain to his side to ask if that panda was actually a player, with the latter pretty much instantly confirming it.
Witnessing this happen in front of his teddy bear eyes, Panda was surprised to learn that they have that function.
Yet, before Panda really had any time to react, the ancient, god-level sorcerer Hajime had quickly charged at him and delivered a powerful blow to his torso, completely erupting a large portion of the stuffing holding him together before following up this brutal attack and completely electrifying him. Then, not done, Hajime, while insulting his strength, hits him with his staff and knocks Panda back into a container.
Having been brutally beaten, Panda notes that Hajime's cursed energy is similar to Megami's Nue, where both have electrified cursed energy surging through their bodies. With his panda form destroyed, the puppeteer begins transforming into his gorilla mode and strikes Hajime with a prolific, unblockable drumming beat.
Noticing a change, Hajime takes a defensive stance and endures the multitude of blows. He says that the attack wasn't too bad, but it wasn't great either, and follows up by using his staff to tear off the panda's right arm. Then continuing with his old school brutality, he throws Panda's own arm straight back into his face, completely blinding the defenseless bear, allowing the sneaky sorcerer to approach him for the puppet's right. Darting in, he delivers a flurry of absolutely brutal hits directly aimed at the panda's face, sending him shooting back into another container. As the broken sorcerer strolls up on the beaten panda, he calls him pathetic and weak before asking if he knows the current whereabouts of Sukuna.
Taken by surprise, Panda doesn't know why he's interested in him, but quickly comes to the realization that he wouldn't be a good matchup with Yuji. So, while trying to think up an excuse, he says he doesn't know.
Noticing the massive amount of stalling before answering his question though, Hajime realizes that he's indeed lying, and demands that he spit it out, as he'll show mercy if he does.
Having thought up an excuse now, Panda says that his uncle goes by the same name, so hearing it took him off guard initially.
Hajime, who easily figures out that he's still lying, doesn't appreciate being looked down on by the cursed puppet and tells him to stop playing with him.
Annoyed now, Panda retorts by saying he's the one being looked down on, and tells him to be aware of his sister, as anyone who meets her eyes, she tries to kill out of pure embarrassment.
All of a sudden, a massive horn is seen from Panda's nose as his body begins to transform and his head morphs into a giant triceratops skull. However, in that exact moment, Hajime charges up his own attack and a lightning bolt appears between them. It's then explained that Kashimo separates the cursed energy's charges like electricity. When he strikes an opponent, so like all of the hits that he's landed on Panda earlier, it transfers a positive charge into the target. Then, when the negative charge that lays inside of Kashimo is discharged, it launches directly at the target without shooting off any other surface. This results in lightning that literally cannot miss, as it will travel directly to its opponent, pretty much taking away any need for Kashimo to actually use the domain, as this is kinda a sure hit technique in itself. Sadly for Panda, as the transformation is still happening, that said lightning bolt strikes and absolutely decimates Panda, mortally wounding him. Standing above the now fallen puppet, Hajime once again asks Panda about Sukuna's whereabouts. Oh boys, here's the saddest part, here's the saddest Panda chapter so far. As we flow into a flashback, we see a young Panda being beaten up by his big brother Gorilla. The young Teddy screams for his sister's aid, and an angry Triceratops marches over, demanding that Gorilla cease the bullying. Yet, the young gorilla tries to say that they were just fighting like a dude from a game. Hearing that, Triceratops says that Panda should get the next turn to fight back, with Gorilla being completely fine with it. Listening to his older siblings, Panda, looking like hella cute man, rolls up to smack his bro a few times. However, he quickly gets punched in the face by the latter, making him cry even more. Completely blown away with what she just witnessed, Triceratops then runs off in pursuit while Panda continues crying out behind them. Later on, Panda is seen holding a Santa Claus ball while trying to follow his older brother and his puppet friends. Not wanting him to follow because they find the training wheels absolutely lame, the fox whispers something in the raccoon's ear, and he tells Panda that he can actually join under the conditions that he throws his ball into the river. Initially, Panda hesitates, claiming that it was a gift from Santa, but after the two pressured him and seeing his older brother's grumpy stare, Panda tosses the ball into the river. Blown away with him actually doing it, the raccoon and the fox tell him that throwing stuff into the river is illegal, as it would harm the environment, before they ran off aiming to tell the police, which is who is Gorilla hanging out with? These are the worst puppets I've ever met. Gorilla rudely asks a saddened Panda why he threw his ball into the river, telling him that it was a precious gift from Santa. Breaking down in tears even more, Panda screams at him that he just wanted to play with his big brother. At night before bedtime, Triceratops berates Gorilla for bullying Panda, instead telling him that when other kids pick on him, he has to be the one to stand up for him. Gorilla counters this by stating that she plays with the other girls and wouldn't understand because of this. He says that he can never have fun with Panda around, as he holds him back and only ever seems to start crying when she shows up. Gorilla thinks that she's far too cushy on him, but Triceratops views this differently. She notes that no matter how mean Gorilla is to him, Panda shrugs off all the bad things and cheers up by the time it's time to eat. He literally doesn't have a bad bone in his body and believes that that's how brothers should always be. She belittles Gorilla by saying that maybe he's the spoiled one, as Panda always ends up forgiving him for his transgressions. Suddenly, interrupting the two of them, Panda then storms into the room with a beetle and shows it to Gorilla, who immediately points out that it's actually a Dorcas titanus stag beetle and screams while throwing it out of the window in horror. Before going to bed, Gorilla and his sister open their piggy bank to see if they have enough change to buy a replacement ball for Panda. As he then begins trying to sleep, he just thinks that an idiot like Panda would be fine with any ball. Suddenly though, in the middle of the night, a voice tells him to wake up. Coming out of a daze, he notices that both he and Triceratops are being led by a strange ghost man, who's obviously like some puppet version of Masamichi for real. But anyway, he quickly recognizes this figure as their father and asks where they're going and for how long, to which their father answers that there's no reason and that it's permanent. At that moment, a terrified Panda bursts out of the house, desperately searching for his big bro and big sis. Gorilla screams back for Panda and tells his father to stop. However, the ghostly man just tells him that that's enough. Gorilla cuts in by saying that Panda can't survive without him, since he's literally terrible at everything he does and will get left behind because he's completely helpless by himself. Not understanding what's actually going on though, the father tells him that they're the ones being left behind and not Panda, so be a good big brother and say goodbye. A confused Gorilla gets defensive, wondering about how in the world he was going to buy a ball for him tomorrow, and that he needed him there to talk to the shopkeepers instead of their sister. But sadly, after a second thought, he finally catches on and fully begins to break down in tears, not wanting to leave this world and his little brother's side. Back in the real world now, Hajime Kashimo stands over the bloodied mess of Panda's obliterated corpse. While prodding the bear, he notes that he didn't gain any points from him, before realizing that he probably hasn't found the core of the panda yet. He picks up Panda's head with his staff and asks once again about the whereabouts of Sukuna. But Panda simply replies, like the true friend and legend he is, that pandas are very tight-lipped. Taking this as an insult, Hajime threatens to fully destroy the rest of Panda, yet, just as he raises bloodlust to do so, the legend himself, with his cursed energy already fully flared up, and with the anger of the entire Jujutsu tech on his back, drops in, completely destroying a shipping container in the process. Instantly, he screams at his boy, asking if Panda has lost some weight. Seeing his classmate arrive, Panda is happy and shouts out Hikari's name, while an initially confused Hajime begins to get riled up. Supercharged with an incredible volume of cursed energy, Hikari rushes in to rescue Panda from Kashimo. He delivers a right hook so powerful that it disarms Kashimo and sends the sorcerer crashing through several freight containers. Oh, like, this battle was going to be so insane, boys. And girls, of course. Anyways, instantly, Hikari follows up, not giving Kashimo any time to recover. Having closed the distance, the special grade does a sick 2-footed jump, throwing himself into the air and delivering a flying dropkick to his opponent's face that Hajime just narrowly avoids. While still in midair though, Hikari swings his leg straight back in an attempt to land a hit, with his opponent just barely having his nose grazed. As Hajime stands there in shock, Hikari's physical power is so overwhelming that his kick's excess cursed energy dents another shipping container and completely deforms it. Standing opposite Hajime, Hikari is electrified by the cursed energy protecting his opponent, but also barely feels the bad side effects from it. Kashimo is impressed that his opponent can ignore the electrification and asks his name. Hikari introduces himself while Kashimo is just completely fascinated by the insane cursed energy output and mysterious music surrounding his opponent. Moving into his fighting stance, Kashimo also introduces himself, and as Hikari hears his name, he realizes that he is the player with 100 points. Knowing that he needs them, he cheekily asks if he can use those points if he's victorious, with Kashimo agreeing and asking to know more about Sukuna if he's the victor. Feeling it coming in, Hikari is suddenly and orgasmically distracted as a large influx of cursed energy received as a bonus from hitting his domain's jackpot envelops him. Noticing that something's up, Kashimo uses the opportunity to barrage his opponent with several hits, but quickly becomes displeased as Hikari isn't resisting at all. As he begins to tell Hikari to not disappoint him, the special grade sorcerer switches things up a little and rattles the ancient sorcerer with an abrupt right hook to the jaw that sends Kashimo absolutely flying. After posing, literally playing the air guitar to go along with his own damn theme song, Hikari instantaneously disappears from the spot he was in to follow up with a flying knee to Hajime's gut, prompting him to admit that his opponent isn't bad at all. Landing back on his feet, Hajime regains his balance, grabs onto the leg Hikari kneed him with, and counterattacks with a spinning elbow straight to the chin of the sorcerer. Overcoming it though, Hikari withstands the attack and forces Kashimo to release his grip by jumping down and completely smashing the ground beneath their feet with a straight punch. Jumping back out of Hikari's range, Kashimo, who's charged back up, discharges the same lightning attack that defeated Panda. Being able to see the approaching lightning, Hikari is able to avoid the direct hit to his head, but sadly his arm is blown off by the attack. Glad and confident that his opponent won't be able to recover in time after being hit, Kashimo rushes in to finish him off. However, Hikari is on his gone level of strength and literally does not care about his arm at all. Instead, he surprisingly counters with a kick straight to Hajime's face and follows up with a punch from the same arm that was supposedly just severed. Blown away by seeing Hikari's arm reappear, Kashimo just manages to block the attack and assumes Hikari used the reverse curse technique to quickly heal himself. It's then explained that when Hikari hit the jackpot with his domain expansion, it resulted in a bonus of unlimited curse energy throughout the round. Hikari himself never actually learned to use reverse curse technique, but the unlimited curse energy coursing throughout his body as a result of hitting the jackpot automatically heals his body with it. In other words, Hikari is pretty much damn immortal for 4 minutes and 11 seconds after hitting the jackpot. This time limit comes to an end as the ancient sorcerer notices the random music surrounding Hikari has stopped, causing his opponent's cursed energy to recede to normal. However, during the previous round, and due to how Hikari's curse technique works after he hits a jackpot, his cursed energy and technique is replenished, allowing him to cast another domain immediately. So, for as long as Hikari continues to hit his jackpot, he can use his domain over and over and over again. So, this is the main reason why Hikari is absolutely broken, and Gojo reasons that he could surpass him someday. Man literally has figured out an infinite cursed energy hack like this is some game of magic or something. Like, oh my lord. But anyway, because of the fact that Big Rari's domain expansion is harmless, he can be as aggressive as he wants, and his activation is extremely quick, probably one of the quickest in the entire universe. Like it states here that the dude's activation is faster than that of Mahito's during Shibuya. As the rules of the idle death game are sent to Hajime's mind, he notes that since he's aware the game is a probability loot type, it means he's likely to keep hitting the jackpot as he activates increased probability. Standing there, Hikari asks him how he is, but Hajime points out that during this period he's not actually unkillable, and Hikari simply responds that the life of gambling has always come with great risks. Flashing in, the two monstrous sorcerers trade a flurry of brutal punches before Kinji spins away and activates his continuation effect, absolutely confusing Hajime with what's going on. It's then explained that currently Hikari is redoing one consecutive effect sequence. The normal percentage chance of hitting the jackpot is over 20% or 1 in 5 on its first activation, and because of that there is usually a high risk of drawing a dud, so typically he only uses this activation when he has increased probability. Igniting the fight once more, Hikari throws another punch, but Hajime blocks it and completely batters the bulked up high schooler, punching him in the side of the head and kneeing him in the stomach. Jumping back though, Hikari flexes while screaming renewal, leading the potty emergency Reichi scenario to occur. During this Reichi scenario, if the Denji wannabe who's stuck on a hypothetical train headed to Yoyogi doesn't have a bathroom, or more specifically as it implies here, doesn't have any accident at all, will result in a jackpot Reichi scenario for Hikari. As the train flies forward, it's shown that this fake chainsaw man named Hero just barely made it to a stop without accident, causing Hikari to once again hit his jackpot. Standing there with his eyes closed and just looking like the absolute king he is, Hikari suddenly reopens his eyes and screams for his music to begin once more. Sometimes, you know, like I really just personally wish I could make sound effects like with my mouth and everything, just like boom. As Hikari finishes speaking, his body once again erupts with a flood of curse energy, restarting his invincibility and the brutal showdown. Time to really kick things up a notch here, boys, so subscribe to please save my throat from the throat goat and push this video to like 5 or 10k likes, just so I know that you want a full 4-hour JJK video dropped, because, you know, I'll compile all these parts together and re-edit the Gojo past arc, and, you know, I'll do that, or I'll tell you, I will, don't make me. Anyway, moving forward. Standing opposite him, Hajime notes how this is the same form that will last for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, meaning that he currently has no restrictions on curse energy and can automatically activate a reverse curse technique. However, he also notes that this time the jackpot was not an even number, meaning that if he activates his domain expansion right after this, his increased probability will have actually ended, so he won't get another jackpot again as quickly after. He states to himself though, that if he can make it through the next 4 minutes and 11 seconds he will win. But as his smile grows larger, he recognizes that that line of thinking is how losers think. Instead, he screams that it's time to turn up the volume, because this is a funeral for the living. He releases a massive burst of curse energy, declaring that even though he may be unkillable for the next 4 minutes and 11 seconds, he will still kill him anyway. Oh, but before we go any further, we skip back in time to a moment 400 years ago where Hajime was approached by Kenjaku, asking if he had fun with his battle. Honestly, any thoughts on who's in the brain-swapping fiend's body right here? I wouldn't be surprised if it was Narutoshi Kamo, to be honest, but who knows, let me know what you think down below. Anyways, after replying that he didn't have fun at all, wanting to fight him instead, Kenjaku asks him to spare him and says that he is not fit for fighting currently, but reveals he heard something in Michinoku about the greatest cursed energy output ever. Coughing up blood though, Hajime asks Kenjaku who's the strongest sorcerer he knows, with the latter replying that it's Sukuna, before apologizing that it was from 600 years ago and saying that he will never change his mind on that fact. Realizing that he will never get to fulfill his own wishes, Hajime responds that if that's the case, he will entertain what Kenjaku has to say, so that he can fight Sukuna himself. Back in the battle, the fight between Kashimo and Hikari intensifies as they both chase each other at high speeds around the port. As Hajime starts to get away, Hikari launches another fat punch that connects with a shipping container, sending it straight towards the ancient sorcerer. Seeing it coming in time, Hajime responds with his own brutal punch, flinging the container straight back at the approaching student. With them both being on opposite sides of the container, they both exchange a multitude of blows on each side of the metal box, completely deforming and destroying it. However, as Hikari breaks through, ready to throw a massive punch, Kashimo dodges by jumping off the ground before he manages to blow half of Hikari's freaking face off with the shipping container door, exposing his face muscles and jaw. With the fight slowing for a moment, Hajime deduces that cursed energy comes from the gut, but he has to use his head to direct the flow of reverse curse technique. So no matter how powerful his reverse curse technique is, it certainly can't be strong enough to regenerate his head. Therefore, Kashimo plans to use his lightning to target his head and completely split it open. Following this, Hajime sends his lightning directly at Hikari, connecting with his head. Yet, I am here to tell you that this is just not a normal human. This is Hikari Kinji, and man just simply blows out all of the energy from the attack straight out of his damn nose as it destroys his face, literally allowing him to regenerate as he breaks. Realizing that he almost died there, Hikari, being as cool as ever, just laughs it off, and with only 8 seconds remaining on his jackpot, shoots in, deciding to use even more brute force in his punches now. After taking a plethora of punches to the face, chin and body, Hajime darts back, realizing that Hikari is getting even faster as the fight continues. Getting straight back to his face though, and with only a few seconds remaining, Hikari, who's completely unkillable, decides to cut loose and totally beat down on his opponent, elbowing him hard in his guts. Yet, surprisingly, this turns out to be exactly what Kashima would actually wanted, and as he smiles, he retrieves a massive streak of electrical feedback using his staff pierced into the ground at some distance. This streak of instantaneous lightning pierces through the left side of Hikari's torso on its way to Hajime, before completely and utterly blowing it to pieces, mortally wounding the student. Just then, the theme song ends, marking the end of Hikari's unkillable period, with Hajime then stating that it's finally over. However, to the perplexed surprise of the ancient sorcerer, Hikari is not done yet, instead moving his hands into placement and opening his domain once more. Sadly, it's shown though that Hikari is just making a desperate attempt at casting his domain. After activating his domain, Hikari keeps trying to spin faster, even if the probability is only 1 in 239. Immediately, Hajime catches on though, as the rules are implanted in his brain, and once again, Hikari, somehow like the dude is a complete and utter demon, gains an unexpected jackpot due to some kind of increased probability, allowing him to roll an even number. Therefore, he is again unkillable for the next 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Breathing a sigh of relief, Hikari states that he's impressed with Kashimo, as he's never faced death this much in one day. But now, thanks to some manga otaku, he's got a big manga brain and asks Hajime if he also likes manga, with the latter stating that he doesn't. Getting the battle underway, Hikari flips things up a notch, figuratively and literally, as he changes his domain's polarities, making down up and also shifting the coordinates of his barrier over the sea. As Hajime falls back towards the sea below him, he states that because his cursed energy is like electricity, it won't stop discharging until it's fully depleted. He has one of 2 options in the coming water tussle. Either he can release his cursed energy until it's all gone, or shut it off until he's able to return to land. This obviously goes back to like what Panda said about someone having that amazing control over their cursed energy at the beginning of this battle. But anyway. However, to avoid falling into the water, Kashimo stands on the cursed spirits that burst out of the ocean in an attempt to devour him. On the other hand, Hikari, who's got his manga brain fully rolling, absolutely pummels a massive cursed spirit as it bursts out of the ocean, before shooting across at high speeds towards Hajime and sending him flying into the ocean below with a fat kick. Then floating above him on some like fat flying fish looking ass cursed spirit, he watches as Hajime slowly begins to burn away all of his cursed energy in the water. However, Kashimo is actually smarter than this. He recalls that there are 2 ways to end a reverse cursed energy user. 1, by simply blowing up their brains, or 2, by using toxins. Therefore, he uses his electricity on the seawater to produce a chlorine gas that completely takes Hikari by surprise as he floats above. Sadly, Hikari loses his grip on the cursed monster and ends up falling into the sea due to the toxic effect of chlorine gas. It's explained that unlike simple body regeneration, addressing a toxin in one's blood requires insane skill, as well as a higher level of reverse curse techniques. Sinking down through the ocean, Hajime notes that Hikari doesn't seem to be able to detoxify fast enough, causing the round to end and allowing Hikari's immortality shield to fade. As Hajime states that this has been fun, preparing to finish him off, Hikari, just like before, dispels the excess cursed energy right out of his freaking nose and throws a vicious punch straight into the face of Hajime, taking him completely by surprise. With the 2 floating back from each other after the attack, it turns out that the legend of Jujutsu Tech targeted the toxins in his body and removed them unconsciously via his automatic reverse curse energy. With only 5 seconds left in his jackpot, Hikari realizes casting his domain again after this one ends will be dangerous due to the effects of electricity coursing through the water and the steadily increasing temperature of the ocean. He ponders going up to the surface, but is like, nah, stuff that dude, I might instead just beat the absolute hell out of this dude here, and proceeds to throw a fat left hook to his opponent's face. Kashime though, battered and bruised, but still excited to continue, drives forth and grabs a hold of Hikari's arm, before releasing a massive blast of electrified cursed energy in an attempt to destroy Hikari's entire arm and prevent him from being able to cast his domain again. Back above the ocean's surface, as all the water rains down, we find a cute baby panda who's changed his form wandering around, as he then comes across Akari's severed hand. As a previously lively battle now comes to a seemingly abrupt end, we see Kashimo plop out of the sea completely out of curse energy. However, right as he is about to consider himself the winner, Akari emerges from the sea himself with one arm and punches him back to reality. It's explained that during the previous attack Hajime released, before the electricity could travel all the way through the water, it resulted in a massive thermal explosion of hot steam. Laying down on the ground completely exhausted, Hajime asks how he isn't ripped apart from this explosion, but Akari explains that he knew what his opponent was up to, and purposely sacrificed his left arm through a binding vow so that the curse energy that usually protected it protected the rest of his body. Hearing this, Kashimo finally tells his enemy to end his life. However, Akari offers him a deal instead, as he personally doesn't see this as a win. Akari also brings up how Kashimo technically didn't use his technique, to which the Ancient One actually explains that he is saving his curse technique to use on Sukuna, as it is a single-use one, and all Kashimo wants is a fight with Sukuna. Therefore, the Ancient Sorcerer agrees to side with Akari in exchange for a future duel with the King of Curses. Rolling onto the scene and seeing the two hanging out, Panda is quite shocked over hearing that Hajime is now on their side because he wants to have a future bout with Sukuna. Akari discards Panda's concerns by casually asserting that a Kohai has to obey his senpai's wish, before randomly leaving the small panda with the Ancient Sorcerer to go in search of someone else. This is also where the announcement of a new rule being added to the game is made. The rule is that players can also give as many points as they want to another player, allowing Hajime to send his points over when needed, obviously. It's actually crazy when you think about it, how all of these battles are happening simultaneously. I love how Gege hasn't given us a timeline per se to go off, but it's more or less just this one kind of rule that we can refer back to, knowing that all of the fights have been in relation with it. But anyway, continuing. Shooting back over to the Ferris wheel, we find that Charles has been chilling out after his defeat. After seeing Hikari rolling up, he confusedly asks what happened to his arm, with the student stating that he'll fix it later. The two mates then bicker about their fight hilariously, like Hikari is actually abusing the dude in an attempt to get the name of his manga out of him because he'll buy and read it, which you know is very nice of him. Big plot twist that I'm going to chuck in here myself, that me and No Operator were talking about for a sec. What if Gege is actually French himself, and this is a self-insert of him in the actual story? It'd be kind of funny to go back to after the story if Gege ever reveals himself and find out that this was just himself inserting. I'd love to know what you guys think on that down in the comment section below. But anyway, continuing on. Big Momo then cruises on in, interrupting their banter and asking if he managed to get all their points necessary, with Akari confirming that he indeed did. So quickly before the video ends, I guess I better go over their plan. So their plan is obviously to implement 4 new rules. The first was to make points transferable to new players, which was done. The second is to allow the use of 100 points to create a substitute player so individuals can actually leave the game. Third is to remove communication blocks on the zones. And then finally, the fourth is to allow people in and out of all of the barriers without consequence. Nishimaya states that she wants to forget rule 3 for now in place of going to get 4 first. The reason they are doing this obviously is because Maki can actually pass through barriers, leaving Akari shocked at this news that she can freely enter them. He asks how it's possible, with Momo stating that it's because she has turned into a complete monster. So that brings us to the very end of the video for today's insane arc from Gege Okutami's Jujutsu Kaisen. What do you guys think on or who do you guys think is going to win when Yuji or Sukuna finally does get to go up against Hajime and probably the upcoming future, because I'd imagine we're not going to get teased on that fight and then not get it. Hajime ain't going to live for 600 years and then not get that fight, there's just no way. Of course, shout out to Big Broken Ronin and No Operator for hopping on this video, as this was my first collab with someone on the channel, so I'd love to know if you guys want more stuff just like that down in the comment section below, where I get another YouTuber to come in and play specific roles in the video. Plus, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you guys are new around here as well, and leave a like on the video, as it really does help out with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. Of course, check out my Patreon as well if you want to support me even further. But anyways, for now it's been your professional degenerate Diavolo, and I will see you all in a bit. Bye.